Commissioner Adams. I'm Commissioner Collier, and I don't believe Commissioner Hill's made it here yet. A few years ago, a wise man gave me a card that said, "May the peace of wild things be with you and yours." And little did he know, probably a couple years later, that we'd be in the middle of this huge project. A project that's probably not been to this magnitude of the downtown of Martinsville since 1857, when they originally started and built the first courthouse. Since then, they've added on. We're going to do an overview of where we're going as we fix up the courthouse, but I'd like to address some of the things that, as commissioners, we live, answer maybe some of the concerns that have been expressed on Porch Time and White Watch Cat. That seems to be the sounding board for the local area. Trust me that none of the commissioners wanted to have an extra 3 meetings a week to redo all this. It'll be ironic that we're planning on a ribbon cutting on July 2nd. We hope to start moving the courts over quickly after that and start the downtown project, or the courthouse, remodeling that at the end of July, beginning of August. It will be 35 years that month since George Bush passed ADA laws. And we are grossly behind the time frame, the cost of building things up. If you go back, I found Commissioner minutes that in 1974, it was recommended by a professional group that went in and looked at the courthouse to basically abandon the courthouse and start and build anew. 1974. I've been called a rhino. I've been called a lot of things in the political front. You learn real quick, if you want to do this job, to have thicker skin, but doesn't mean you're deaf. Doesn't mean you don't hear it. And I just want everybody to go that I'm going on record. If you think that passing capital projects such as this onto my grandchildren, of which I have none, passing this type of project onto grandchildren and the next generations is not being conservative, then I will disagree with you. This project is long overdue. It probably should have been done 50 years ago. So I'm proud to undertake this. We're having a grand opening on July 2nd of the building behind you. It is approximately $46 million of the total 4 lots of $72 million. We're upgrading everything for the courts. And then you sit there and say, well, why didn't you just remodel the courthouse? That's an excellent question, and we looked into that. But the problem is, it has served its purpose. The courthouse of 1857 no longer has the functionality of a needed courthouse in today's environment. When the victim and the accuser have to pass each other within 2 feet, that is not a very safe or a good way to handle the courts. And I tell everybody, because I was told this story by a family, one of the greatest days in a little girl's life was being in the middle of an adoption. And 6 orange-suited prisoners walked by, and praise the Lord that one of them congratulated her and didn't say something that could have scarred that little girl on what should have been the greatest day of her life. People in orange jumpsuits shouldn't be walking next or through the middle of the halls, period. Those days are over. Also, we shouldn't have people working in our basements, period. Won't go into all the philosophies of that, but our system, our courts, our basements were not designed to be working in functional offices. We do need the office space, so had we abandoned the downtown courthouse, we would just be out building either another building or seeking and renting somewhere else. For those of you that are merchants in the downtown Martinsville area, the commissioners were offered an opportunity to move the court system to another community. And why wouldn't they offer that to us? All the people that come in, all the people that go to the candy kitchen, that go to the Mexican restaurant, that go to the steakhouse. Any of the other communities would have gladly taken that so that their businesses could get the lunches and the traffic from the attorneys that come in from out of town. So working with the City of Martinsville, the county seat, we have developed a long-range plan. This is the third phase of a 4-phase plan. When the courthouse is done in a couple years, we will be then remodeling this building that's 35 years old. And that will complete the judicial campus, and it will complete a complete upgrade of the courthouse. Tonight we're just going to talk a little bit, we're going to go in as we transition from completing the judicial center to what to expect over the next roughly 24 months in the downtown area. With the upgrades, the lane closures, there's going to be growing pains, as comes with anything of this magnitude. And we're having this meeting tonight to discuss the direction that we're heading and to seek your input in case something stands out that we might have missed in our 3 meetings. It's not Josh and I and Commissioner Adams and Commissioner Hill. We've sought the expertise of outside people to help guide this, who do this every day. And without further ado, I will pass this over to Mr. Josh Messmer.
Thanks, Commissioner Collier. Good evening, everybody. I will say I am excited in the fact that this is the most engagement we've had for anything. We went through a number of meetings for these projects over many years. We've never had this much engagement. At our first meeting, we had quite a bit more folks than this. I would say we had around 50 people. Most of them were downtown merchants, and we're glad you guys are here this evening as well. So I'm going to give you a little overview of what's going to happen tonight. First, Brian introduced us. We didn't introduce Will Thibault. Will's with Meyer Nation. Brian alluded to the fact that this isn't something, as we work through these downtown plans, which we'll go over in a little bit, we didn't come up with this ourselves. It's not our expertise. We have a whole team of professionals behind us. We have our architecture firm, BLZ. We have our contractor, Meyer Nation, contractor manager, and then we have our actual contractor. These folks have put a lot of time and energy into making sure that what we come up with is what we think is the lowest impact to the community. And I said this at our first meeting. This is not 100% guaranteed the order we're going to do this. We're going to show you our preferred option. We're going to show you some alternates. The overwhelming feedback from our first meeting was that most people preferred option 1, which is what we will present to the Board of Public Works of the City of Martinsville on May 12th. They have the ultimate decision over which of these methods we will go through. Now, there's no getting around the fact roads have to be closed at some point, some way, shape, or form. The question is how, what order, on what time frame. And that's something that in a moment, Will's going to walk you through a number of those options. The other thing I want to make sure to point out, Erin Pipkin back there, most of you have been given handouts. She also has comments. At the end of this presentation, we will be happy to hear comments from you all. Like Brian said, even though there's a whole team of folks who have taken a look at this, it doesn't mean we haven't missed something. If anybody thinks of a question later or doesn't want to speak up in front of the crowd, you can leave your comments with Erin and we'll get through those. And eventually, most of these comments will be incorporated into a frequently asked questions page so that other folks who may have similar questions can get those answers, and they'll go on our website. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Will, and he can start to walk us through some of the options.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Like Josh said, my name is Will Taboo. I'm going to be the project manager for this upcoming construction project at the courthouse. I'm part of the team that's working on the judicial campus building behind us right now. And I would like to reiterate what the commissioners and what Josh has said is that us as a general contractor, we are very mindful of the impact this is going to have on you guys, and we do care about the impact that it has. I know we're not a contractor from Martinsville, but we've spent the last 3 years here, personally the last 2 for me, and I've gotten to know a lot of you guys, a lot of people in town, and we want to do the best we can to not overpromise and underdeliver, but to provide a clear plan of what we're going to do and get your input and make sure we're doing the best for the community. So like Josh said, options. The first, as Josh mentioned, is the preferred option. The reason it's the preferred option is it's because it gives the streets that we're going to take away and the parking that we're taking away for construction back and turned over to the city as quickly as possible. So this first preferred option you'll see in yellow is starting on Jefferson Street. We would be doing the utilities and road work in Jefferson Street. We'd be starting that in mid-July, so while they're moving out of the courthouse and over to this judicial campus building, we'd be commencing road work on Jefferson Street. Since that is a one-way street, we would be closing the entirety of Jefferson Street during that time. You'll see over in green on the east side of Jefferson Street, that sidewalk will remain open during construction. We'll have our construction fencing up. We'll have appropriate signage for the vendors over on the east side of that street. We want to do the best we can to make sure this is a safe process for all the pedestrians around the perimeter streets. We did have a question last meeting that I failed to address on the slide. So the green sidewalk that's open on the east side, what's not included there is the opposite side of Morgan, Main, and Washington Streets. Those perimeter sidewalks will also remain open throughout the entirety of the project. I just want to make that clear that we're not closing those perimeter sidewalks. And we'll get to the parking here in a minute. So continuing on the phasing of this, would be starting in mid-July. That week of July 14th would be the target. And we're looking at about 4 weeks to be able to do the utilities we have in that street, resurface it, get the curb at the north and south ends of Jefferson Street complete, inlet structures there, and then turn that over. So another question we had last time is, what does turnover mean? So turnover to us is we are giving the parking, the sidewalks, the ADA ramps, everything over to the city for public use, and then we're not coming back to touch it. We want it to be a final turnover where it is being used by the public and we're not coming back and interfering with that. So after that first phase, about 4 weeks, then mid-August we move into phase 2, which is everything in red on this sheet. The reason that this is going to be the quickest option is because we're doing all of that road work, so we would close parking everywhere in red around the existing courthouse now, and we'd be doing utilities, curbs, resurfacing of asphalt, striping signage, everything that I mentioned before that we'd be turning over to the city. And that does include the new perimeter sidewalk that goes around the courthouse, which there's not currently an existing sidewalk, so we want to make sure it's, again, safe and accessible for all the pedestrians downtown. So that work would be turned over prior to Thanksgiving of this year, prior to Small Business Saturday. I know when we first came, brought this project and our phasing options to the attention of the commissioners, that was the first thing they said, is that it has to be open for Small Business Saturday. So we're very aware of that, and we know that that is a hard deadline that we can't miss. And I know a popular question is there's weather, there's unforeseen conditions, but we selected a contractor that's done work much bigger than this and undertaken a lot of stuff up in the Indianapolis area that we feel very confident can get this work done and turned over prior to Thanksgiving. And we wouldn't be standing here right now if we weren't confident in that, because like I said, last thing we want to do is overpromise and underdeliver.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple things from questions that came up in our first presentation I just want to make clear to everybody. So this red is to the center line of the road approximately. It's not the entire street, so Iron Agent will maintain traffic around 3 sides of the square all the time with their maintenance of traffic. So that's the first thing. Second thing, when they turn it over at Thanksgiving, project's not done. As we've said, this is going to go on for a number of years, but the construction limits will come back in entirely into the county side. The streets will be back open at that time. The other thing that I really want to point out, so when we close down the courthouse, that's going to be about 65 people that are not working downtown throughout that process. Can anybody give me a guess at what they think is the number of visitors to the courthouse each day? No guesses, no guesses. Eric? What do you think?
I didn't know it was so.
So the courthouse staff, security tracks the number of visitors that are not employees. If you look at it on a 365-day basis, which would be very conservative, there's more than 170 people each day. That is not including the folks that are visiting the probation department each day. If you just assume conservatively that 30% of the volume of the courthouse goes over there, that's 225 people per day. We add that, the employee count that's not going to be there. Somewhere in the range of 275 to 300 folks are not going to be on the courthouse day in and day out while we're doing this project. Will's going to talk more through numbers and spacing happens, but I just want to make it really clear that yes, this is going to be a huge impact, but you're going to see a ton of folks that are not there as well.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying, Josh. And to build on what he was just saying, so with that one lane closure, you are going to have westbound Morgan Street open, southbound Main Street and eastbound Washington Street open during construction, during phase 2. And then once phase 1 is complete, then southbound Jefferson Street would be open. And then you'll see phase 4 is in orange, phase 3 being the interior site. Phase 4 would be turning over that final west side of Jefferson Street. As we finish site construction, we'd use that as our construction entrance. It's the safest option that's not going to disturb traffic on Main, Morgan, and Washington Streets. That would be within our site limits. We just wouldn't be turning over those spaces until the end of the project. So this is just a quick overview of what we'd be looking at as far as schedule for turning this over based on this preferred phasing plan. So we're looking at an impact of around 4.75 months, which is everything done and turned over by that Thanksgiving date of 2025, minus that phase 4, which would be the west side of Jefferson Street. So we'll take a look at some parking notes, because that's going to be the biggest thing while we're doing construction. So what you'll see here is that open after phase 1 in orange on the right side. That's what we're talking about when we say turnover. So that west side would still remain closed, like I mentioned. We'd have 23 spaces over on the east side of Jefferson Street open, and then the one-way Jefferson Street. While phase 1 is ongoing, all of our perimeter parking around the courthouse that exists right now, the parallel parking, would still remain open. So you have 26 spaces there. And then in the blue, like I mentioned before, all of that parking on the opposite side of the street from our roadwork, we're not impacting that side of the street. That parking remains open throughout the duration of the project with a count of 42 spaces. So let's look at the first alternate plan. It's essentially the same layout as the first preferred plan that we looked at. The difference is Jefferson Street in its entirety would be done at the end of the project. So that would be in fall of 2026, winter turning that over. The difference here is our phase 1 would start that first week of August after everyone's moved out of the courthouse. That way we could take those same perimeter streets, Morgan, Main, and Washington, do that work concurrent and turn that over prior to Thanksgiving 2025, the same as the preferred plan. I just want to note that we would still be taking the west side of Jefferson as a construction entrance, but then the east side of Jefferson and the existing parallel parking would be open during that phase. So the difference there is one, at Jefferson Street not getting turned over mid-August anymore, so you have a few less spaces there on the east side of Jefferson. But as far as the Morgan and Main Streets go, essentially the same, turned over by Thanksgiving, and that's the same sidewalks, ADA ramps, and utilities. Everything is done in those streets. We're pulling our site fence in, like Josh had mentioned before, and then we're giving those over to the city. So then a recap of the alternate plan Like I said, it's basically the same. Washington, Main, and Morgan are turned over prior to Thanksgiving 2025, with then Jefferson Street out into fall, first of winter of 2026. The reason it's a little bit more of an impact is, yes, you have the gap there, but then you also have a remobilization, and you're taking that full Jefferson Street, so you have to figure 3 to 4 more weeks for that side to get all that utility tied in and complete. So just a quick parking count for this alternate phasing plan. Again, it's similar to the first, the difference being that your yellow now is opened after phase 3. And I have to apologize, on the left side, the west side of Jefferson Street, that should be included in that yellow as well. So the next plan we're going to look at is really taking the phasing and drawing it out over a period of time due to breaking it up. Now this would be if the concern of closing one side of Morgan, Main, and Washington Street at the same time feels like too much of an undertaking to the community, then this is the alternative. And the reason we really went away from this while we were talking about it early on is that it draws out that construction over close to the duration of the project, 18 months, rather than trying to get it all done early on. And what you run into is with our start time, the winter and asphalt plants, and not knowing when that's going to open back up, it's hard to give a exact timeline of when we can turn that over. So this is like I said before, we don't want to overpromise something and not be able to deliver that. So with this phasing option, we would be starting in that 1st of August. We'd be starting with Jefferson Street still, same as the first phasing option, turning that over, and then we would relocate everything, move to the next phase, and go to then Washington Street there in red. So again, in this, just to clarify, phase 2 being the interior site, because that would be starting at the same time as Jefferson Street, which is why we jumped from 1 to 3 on the streets. So after we turn Jefferson Street over, we then move down to Washington and work our way around the square. So after we finish the first 2 phases, we wouldn't want to open up another street with the risk of not being able to turn that back over prior to winter, fully surfaced, striped, signage up, sidewalks complete. So then that would push until the spring of 2026, where we would then, and I'll jump to the next slide, I apologize. So that would jump to the spring of 2026 to commence that work, to make sure that we're able to complete that with the winter weather, after the winter weather is complete. So like I mentioned, then we'd move from Main to Morgan Street, which would be turned over late May 2026, or I apologize, started in late May 2026, turned over in July 2026. So we'll take a look at some of the parking, so same spots, but just showing how that would be phased turnover and available of the existing. So you still would have those existing parallel parking spaces. The other advantage of doing the first plan is once we turn that over in Thanksgiving 2025, that all becomes that new diagonal parking that has far more spaces than what we have existing right now. So you can see some of the parking counts here of what would still be available compared to the new 67 total spaces that we would be turning over in that first phasing option. So just as a visual here, you can see the Jefferson and Washington streets turned over prior to Thanksgiving 2025. We take that gap and then we would start that work as soon as we feel comfortable that we'd be able to place final asphalt. We wouldn't, like I said, we wouldn't want to open it up. Asphalt plants aren't open and then it remains open and sitting for weeks until that weather improves. So that's what this is showing. An April start, more confident that that's when we would be able to get everything completed as quickly as possible, turn back over, but with the phasing, so we would not be starting that next Morgan Street until Main is complete and so on and so forth. And then that Jefferson side west would still be the same as all the other phasing plans where we're using that as a construction entrance, then turned over at the end of the project in fall, early winter of 2026. or 2020, yes, 2026. So a quick schedule comparison of the three options that we discussed. Like I said, the preferred option is ripping off the Band-Aid, if you will, giving those three perimeter streets an early start on Jefferson, and really trying to get that all turned over prior to Thanksgiving 2025, and then we're out of your hair. Site fence moves in. Like Josh said, we're going to be working on interior site work. The west side of Jefferson Street would still be used as a construction entrance, but we no longer have the one-lane closures on the perimeter streets, and we're turning over a higher parking count with that new diagonal parking. So one thing that we did want to address as well is that as we're losing these parking spaces, the other question comes up, well, where are the contractors going to park? Because you're right, we're going to have a lot of contractors on site. We estimate during interior construction anywhere between 30 and 50 at a time. So we've designated specific lots for them to park. We will not be permitting them to use public parking. We want that all the parking we have to be available to the public. So we've designated from the city lot at 214 North Main Street, anything inside the site limits that may fluctuate throughout construction, but we'll do what we can to allow our people to park on our site. And then this 69 West Columbus, which is the new lot just south of us here at the judicial campus, that we would be using for contractor parking. So this is just a review of after 2026 what our parking counts are going to be like near the downtown square. So like we've talked about, the Courthouse Square is going to be 146 new spaces. That's including the perimeter streets that we're not touching. We've included the new judicial campus, which is going to have 202 spaces in the new lots, and then the 29 at the Mulberry and Columbus Street. So after construction is complete over at the courthouse, then that would be no longer contractor parking, of course, and turned back over for use of the judicial campus.
So a couple things I want to point out here. As you can see, the parking counts that we're going to have at the end of all these projects, both the county and city have done, are a couple hundred spots more. But one of the things that we didn't point out exactly, the parking lot that's right here behind us, we will open about 100 spots before we start construction over there. So everything that is our temporary construction laid down now, those spots will be open, and that's where our employees will be. So they won't need to park down there because this is not open yet. Just want to make sure everybody was clear on that.
And I think that's pretty much everything that I have, but I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to speak with you guys. We've enjoyed our time that we've been in Martinsville, and are happy to be here for another couple of years, but we want to make sure that we're doing right by everybody in town, and we're going to do the best we can to minimize the impact we have on you guys. And we have, same as Josh and the commissioners, we have open communication as well. Like I said, we've made a lot of relationships here in town, and intend to keep those good relationships. So appreciate you guys giving me the time to talk today.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Him? He's the contractor. So how, you said you're gonna be on site development, how are you going to handle the traffic that is one lane on Morgan, Main, and Washington?
As far as directing traffic and safety.
Because you said you was gonna direct the traffic.
Yes, sir.
You would have somebody there to do it. So how are you going to route, say, the traffic on Main Street or Morgan Street?
So we do have a traffic maintenance plan that I'd be happy to go over with you. I don't have that up right now,
Okay.
but we do have that. We have detour signs posted, and I believe they go, and I apologize, I should know the street name, but east and west, and I'd be happy to share that with you afterwards. But I do want to point out too that when we are in the middle of that, I think it came up in the last meeting that when we are in the middle of the street there, we're not going past that limit of disturbance. I think somebody asked if there would be periodic 2-lane closures of all these streets. That will not happen. In this case, we have one water tap that's on the north side of the site over by the new theater construction. So we will be doing that early, and I failed to mention that in the first slide, so I apologize, but we will be doing that early, getting that done so we're not closing 2 lanes of any of these streets at any point in time.
Is that the phase 0 that?
Yes, sir, it is.
Boy, doesn't like it, call him sir. So one of the things, one second, ma'am, and then I'll be happy to call on you. So the floor is gonna be open here. One of the things we just wanna make sure, we're not gonna tell you answers on the fly if we aren't for sure. So like with the maintenance of traffic, Will can get that kind of information, he can provide it. You're more than welcome to come in and check it out, and same with anyone. So I just wanted to level set. If we don't know the answer, and some of the times we won't know it off the top of our head, we're gonna be clear about that, and we'll work on getting that answer. Yes, ma'am?
I was wondering, you just mentioned the water tap. Is the primary concern with this paving and curbs and parking spaces, or are the utility works and other things being done?
Good.
Yeah, so the main utility work that we have in these streets are gonna be storm and sanitary tie-ins. And like I said, that's gonna be on our side, inside our limit of disturbance. There is that one water tap, which will not interrupt service to that water. We did the same thing here at the judicial campus. And I'm not sure if that answers your question or not, but the main concern on our end is getting parking and sidewalks turned over to the city. But as far as utilities, all that work is included in this phasing plan. Does that answer your question?
Kind of, yeah. Are we doing like electrical work for future courthouse renovation and waterworks, or is it primarily just paving and curbing?
Yeah, that's most of the work. Like I said, there are some new storm inlets that are gonna be added, like I said, on our site, and then tie back into the courthouse. But as far as electrical, we're not going out into the street for that. That's all contained within our site.